thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, it's my pleasure to welcome my friend Jess Shin and Newly Kim.
That's right.
Hey Jess, how are you?
Hi Claire, it's so good to see you.
Yes, you too. It's right before we started recording, I was just saying it's been a minute, even though like with pandemic and stuff, I don't even know the last time we saw each other in person.
I feel like it was at like a random gathering or something like that.
Sure.
I don't even recall which one, but it's been so long.
Well, regardless, thank you so much for giving me your time today to tell me more about your life and what your job is. So without further ado, Jess, what is it that you do?
Yeah, so right now I'm a regional sales manager for a traffic technology company called Applied Information.
Okay, so like I have no idea what that is.
Yep. No, that's totally fine. I was the same. Like, I didn't even know this industry existed before I started at this company. I mean, when you're driving, you don't really think about what makes the lights work. You just drive and trust that, things will happen, and you notice when things aren't working. But, I never thought about like the technology and everything that it takes infrastructure wise to, make traffic a good experience. And so I'm definitely still learning. Like I said, I didn't know this industry existed either. I just started in this industry October 2 years ago. So Still super, super new. And I was in fashion before that. So definitely huge learning curve.
I mean, I cannot wait to hear more of that story in a minute. But so can you repeat your title one more time for me?
Yeah. So I'm the regional sales manager for a traffic technology company called Applied Information.
Okay. So you were saying, you don't think about like how the traffic lights turn a different color and things like that.
Right.
So, I mean, like literally that's what it is. Like the company you work for?
There's so many avenues and like different, like I said, like so many things that have to happen for traffic to work well. We are not in the business of necessarily like the day-to-day traffic. It's called SPAT, it's signal, phase, and timing.
Okay.
Traffic is a lot of acronyms. I feel like every industry is a lot of acronyms, but this one is truly a lot of acronyms. But we do a lot of things, but we have three main product lines, and I'll just go through them super quickly as I can. And the first is like school beacons. Blair, I know you have kids, so like I don't know if you've noticed, but when school's in session during pickup and drop off, there's like this flashing yellow lights, like when the speed is different.
Yes.
And so we sell technology that goes kind of in a cabinet in those signs that make them turn off and on automatically. And so people can also like remotely schedule them. So when there's like holidays or fall break, like someone's not having to like go out there and manually change that, which is the case in some parts of the country still. Like they literally at the start of every day and at the end of every day are manually going and turning those on and off. So we kind of get rid of that and allow people to manage their school system, their school flasher system from our cloud-based webpage. So that's one line. I would say that's like the most simple technology that we sell. And then the second one is kind of the one that I'm most passionate about. It's called Preemption. But basically we put a box of technology in a fire vehicle or emergency service vehicle or a police car. And then I never noticed these before, but at every intersection, there's a silver traffic cabinet, and a lot of things go in that silver box. But we sell an additional box that can go in there that if the lights and sirens are going and that vehicle has our box in the car and that intersection has our box, it'll preempt green lights. So that it prevents like those crazy traffic jams, or when the siren's coming, but you don't know like which direction it's coming from. It's like so anxiety driving. It causes actually a ton of accidents and deaths for firefighters and civilians. And so our technology brings at every intersection the safely to a stop in the direction of the fire vehicle will get green lights. So that's like another thing. And then the third, like newest kind of craziest, I guess, is connected vehicles. And so we do that through like multiple avenues. And I like won't go into like all the detail, but we have an app that you can download. And if the city has our stuff, our technology deployed, then like the app will give you like kind of signal phase and timing and emergency vehicle messages, so that you know like what's going on. So the perfect example is like the city of Marietta. So the city of Marietta in Georgia is like completely deployed with all of our technology. So if you're driving a car and you have our app pulled up, let's say you're like speeding in a school zone, you will get a bop speeding in a school zone alert. If there's an emergency vehicle, like you hear sirens, you'll get an alert on your phone that says emergency vehicle approaching from behind. And then there's other things like get ready for green. So like if you're at a stoplight, you're like, if you're a mom, you're like reaching back to take care of your kids, or, you're on your phone or doing your makeup, it'll like tell you like, get ready for green. So the light's about to turn green, get ready to like go.
What?
So those are, yeah. And so again, like the city has to have our stuff deployed, and we're having record breaking years this year and last year. So it's definitely getting deployed in more and more places, but that's kind of like the three major product lines that my company sells. And I manage our distribution. So we don't sell direct to cities and agencies.
Okay.
We sell through distribution partners. So I help manage those distribution partners.
Holy smokes. I am like a little bit overwhelmed in the sense of like, man, that is crazy that you do this, first of all. And then secondly, like, man, to think about that type of technology existing. And again, I'm pretty sure my regular listeners are probably like, Blair, you say this every single time. But truly, like, I don't think about some of these jobs at all. Like, it's totally not even in my purview. And the thing about the fire trucks and the emergency vehicles is so crazy. I mean, honestly, I've seen it on TV. Like, they like, I've seen some like they like flip a switch. Is that a thing?
Right. Yep. So like there's different ways of kind of activating preemption. But for us, it's like kind of the wires tied to the wire that like turns their lights and sirens on.
I see.
And so that kind of activates it. And it's GPS based. So like as it approaches, it's kind of like, it's not like it's turning all of them green. It's like kind of as it approaches, it like then preempts the signals in front of it.
That is insane.
Yeah.
So this type
it was crazy. The first time I experienced it, I was like, this is like a video game. This is crazy.
That's insane. So like, so you had to kind of experience it firsthand so that you would know what it is.
Right. Yeah. And I still like, there's still, because we're a technology company, I feel like anyone that's in the technology space, like everything's always changing. Like, I think I finally understand something. And then like, we've like done a new software update, or we're deploying a new technology. I'm like, okay, love this.
That's so funny. Okay. So, I mean, it seems as though like you feel passionate about what you do. I don't know, because it's just the way that you're talking about it. I feel like you've really taken ownership of whatever it is that you're managing.
Yeah,
right now.
I mean, firstly, I'm in sales, so I have to, right? Like if I'm in sales and I don't sound like this, then I probably would not be good at my job. But I think, like I kind of mentioned, like my favorite thing that we do, or the thing I'm most passionate about, when I first got approached about entering this industry, I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't think that I can do that every day. But when I really learned like the benefits of preemption, and I got to like really engage with fire chiefs and like understand like how crucial 10 seconds is. I remember I was at like a city of Marietta. It was like my first month at this company, and they took me to the city of Marietta. It was like a big council event. And they had just, they were kind of doing their press release for their whole like smart city system. And the mayor, he did something so clever. I don't know if it was the mayor or probably the person that writes his speeches, but they did a study, the fire department, and they were averaging 60 seconds time saved every trip. So like every response, like they were shaving 60 seconds off their response time. And the mayor he had like a clock up there. and he had us hold our breath for 60 seconds. And he was like kind of narrating through those 60 seconds while we're holding our breath. He was like, imagine you're waiting for your loved one to get an ambulance, and you're just, this is how long it's taking. And that, I think that just really, really impacted me of like, wow, like I'm not just selling things just to sell things. Like this is infrastructure that can really save people's lives, especially when it comes to drug overdose. Like even 10 seconds is like between life and death. And getting to talk to fire chiefs, and for them like understanding like, wow, that's like way less stress on me as a battalion chief or as a chief, because every time, you know, my drivers are going through an intersection, they're putting their lives at risk and civilians' lives at risk, because not everyone like knows what to do. And so he's like, it really takes stress off of me. And so I think getting to really understand the impacts of the infrastructure changes helped me to become really passionate about something that I didn't even know existed prior to. And it might not be as like glamorous as, you know, fashion, but it still is like really like easy to be passionate about it, because I know that it's real and I can be genuine about the life-saving impacts and not feel like I have to fluff or like be super salesy about it.
No, yeah. I mean, when you were talking about the mayor's speech just now, I got the chills because it's like
Right.
that is so true. And I can't believe that 60 seconds can be shaved off just through this piece of technology. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, like
It
response time,
was
I feel like is everything, especially in those emergency situations. That's crazy. So, you know,
right.
you were saying that for that third piece, that third kind of what did you call them?
Connected vehicles. Yeah.
Yes, connected vehicles. Um, like you said, the technology has to be kind of applied in the city that you're in. So, like
Right.
applied information's like the company that you work for, like, is it? I don't know how to ask this. Like, are there a lot of companies like this, or?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of like there are different lines of products that do preemption. I
Uh-huh.
think what really kind of sets apart what we do, especially in the connected vehicle space, is like without getting into the weeds of it, like there's a lot of like when it comes to the FCC, like there's a lot of like politics involved. So like
Sure.
people can't
Hmm.
agree on like what frequency of communications they want to use. They keep fighting over
Oh.
allocation. So it's kind of been at a standstill for a really long time. There was just recently a ruling for the first time in a long time. Because there's like this big push behind infrastructure and transportation now. But for us, it's like, okay, while y'all are arguing over which network we're going to use, we're going to deploy an everyday app that the person that drives a Tesla and has a 1940s pickup truck can have access to the same technology from something everybody already owns, which is a smartphone. So that's kind of the president of my company's approach, which is very different in our industry compared to other people.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, it might be because I'm just naive to this type of industry, but I'm like, wow, that's mind blowing for me. Like, just to be able to think so innovatively, like, hey, like, okay, then we'll figure it out ourselves and
Right.
make it safer for everybody else. But, man, that's awesome. Okay, so can you take us through a typical day for you? Like, are you working from home these
Yeah.
days or?
Yeah, so definitely majority I work remote. I go in kind of right now as needed when it comes to presentations and stuff. So during the pandemic, actually, we had to make a huge shift because a lot of our industry previously was trade shows, which obviously not happening during a
Oh,
pandemic, and a lot of like in-person meetings. So like I mentioned before, like it's not like we go directly to cities, we sell through distribution partners.
okay.
Kind of they have like allocated territories.
Okay.
So in more like terms that I guess like people use more often, like if we're a manufacturer, we have like wholesale distribution that goes and, you know, talks to the cities and counties and departments of transportation.
I see.
And so we had to really pivot. And so what we did is we created our second, we had like a lab and we made that kind of a studio space. So I kind of had to lead an initiative of really doing like weekly webinars because we're not going to these trade shows. We started doing like our presentations to the cities. Instead of us going there and meeting our partners there, we would like set up all these Zoom calls. So a lot of my days on Zoom, whether that's internal calls or with our partners or presenting to cities with our partners, it's a lot of Zoom and a lot of phone calls. But my day to day is different every day, which is part of, I think, the fun in it. It's a zoo every day. But I think where I thrive is I like when things work. I like when things work well, and I like to make things work. So that can be anything ranging from making sure a shipment got configured correctly and delivering tracking to my partner. It could be having internal sales meetings to talk about how we can improve our processes. And then it can also be, like very customer outward facing. I drive to kind of our studio and do a presentation to the county or a fire chief with our partner on our technology.
Wow, that's really, what came to mind as you were talking about, especially pivoting to a different type of
Yeah.
platform and stuff during such a difficult time of 2020 was,
Yeah.
how did you plan your wedding through all that? That's what came to mind.
Oh my gosh. That was such a stretching year. And like, I
Oh,
didn't plan a wedding. I planned 4 different versions of a wedding. Like it
yes,
was
I know. Oh man, but that was more of a personal question. But man,
No, but I mean, that is a part, I think it's a part of it, like I had to stay very organized and on top of
mm,
my stuff. And that's a pivotal part of what I do as a sales manager.
sure,
I'm responsible at the end of the day for being the communication gap in all forms between our partners and my executive team. And so from communicating like what we think we're going to sell like 2 quarters in advance so that our production can be planned by our manufacturing team to if we've developed a new configuration tool or something, and helping our partners and our end users understand what that is. It's a lot of communicating is
right,
what I do
right.
day to day.
Which I feel like does suit you. The little I do know about you, is like you are very good at communicating. You're very like extroverted. Am I wrong in saying that?
Well, I think I used to be way more extroverted. I
Okay.
don't know if it's being married to Abe,
Sure.
who's my husband, who's like 99% extroverted. So in comparison, I feel like I'm introverted.
Sure.
Um,
I don't
but I
disagree with
de-
you in that for sure.
right, but I definitely think I'm a very highly like relational person, like
Okay.
interpersonal,
Yes.
like skills, building relationships, being able to, really kind of tailor my communication style depending on who I'm speaking with. I think that
Mm,
is something I really do enjoy for sure.
So do you definitely feel like in this job it is a strength for you?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
So, okay, like you have to take me back now, to the beginning. Cause
Yeah.
I'm, again, the little I do know about you, I'm like, how in the world did you end up
Right.
in
I mean, how
technology?
far back do we want to go?
Okay. I mean, can you take me back to maybe like senior year of high school?
Yeah, sure. So that was I kind of told Blair before we hopped on. I was like, "Are you sure you want me on this?" I was like, "I did not have a conventional path." So going along with that, I actually skipped my junior year of high school. When people hear that, they think I'm like some kind of genius or something. I mean, I was smart and I applied myself, but I definitely was not a genius. I just honestly wanted to get out of high school, and so I was able to kind of talk to my guidance counselor and really figure out how to do my credits so I could get out of high school. So because I graduated early, I was originally going to go to art school in New York. That was kind of my passion. That's people that know me like know that like I just love visual things. So
Mm,
whether that's like interior decorating or fashion or even like organizing my pantry, like visual things is something that I really enjoy, and so I always thought I would kind of end up in that industry. um, but I actually ended up going to Hawaii for YWAM instead, and I thought I was just going to do that kind of for 6 months, do my DTS. And I feel like I don't want to get into like too much of that, but that time period went from 6 months to almost 5 years very quickly.
Okay, so for those of
So
you that don't know what YM is or
right.
DTS, could you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah. So YWAM is Youth with a Mission. It's like I think the second largest Christian organization, and it's DTS is kind of their first required, I guess, program. And it's usually like 3 months lecture phase where every week they have different speakers, and then 3 months, 2 to 3 months like outreach. And so my DTS was unique because it was really focused. It was called APAC, so Asian Pacific. So it was really tailored to outreach in Asia
Oh,
and the South Pacific Islands. And so my DTS experience was unique because yes, it was in Hawaii, but it was very much more like culturally integrated with the islands. So we had Hawaiian class once a week. I learned how to hula. I think when I hear about other DTSs, that was kind of something that was unique, I guess, about my experience.
oh, I mean, that sounds really fun.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. I mean, I felt so at home. Like, I mean, people have always told me I don't look Korean. And when I went there, I was like, oh, is this where I've been supposed to be my whole life?
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, kind of along with that. So I lived in the islands for maybe like 3.5 years total. I moved to New Zealand when I was 18, and we were kind of recommissioning an existing base that had kind of fallen off. So um, that was also different because it wasn't like we were like doing Sunday Bible study every day or something like that, or missions in the typical sense. It was a lot of
Hmm.
community outreach. Like we
Okay.
did afternoon like programs for like the local Maori and like South Pacific Islander community. I lived in what was considered the hood in Mangere. It's like outside of Auckland, but I mean, to me, it wasn't the hood because New Zealand is stunning, and I was
Right.
like, this does not feel like the hood. Um, but yeah, and then I led teams, I led outreach teams to like Fiji, Tahiti, like 3 months at a time, and people are like, "Oh, your missionary life was so hard." um, but it definitely pushed me because I was so
No,
young. I
for
was
sure.
18,
For
and I was
sure.
leading teams of people that were like all
Yes.
older than me. And there was times where we were on like remote islands that didn't have running water.
Yeah.
Um, so it definitely, I think that's where I really developed, like kind of bringing it back full circle, I guess, like my strength in communication and interpersonal skills and like emotional intelligence and stuff like that.
Mm.
But I was really blessed, and like looking back, I'm so grateful I was surrounded by kind of leaders, but ultimately they're more than leaders. They like became my family of islanders and Maoris, and really just people that learned how to bring community to the forefront in a real like genuine way. And I think that developed a lot of my identity as well.
I mean, that is such an experience that I'm like a little bit envious of because it's like, but at
Yeah,
the same time, I feel you when people are like, oh, like, must have been so difficult, living on
I
these
know.
beautiful islands.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, at such a young age, it is extremely challenging, you all, to like send people to different places in an organized fashion. I know
Right.
that firsthand just serving at my own church. And um, I think it's incredible that, I mean, I don't know the DTS structure or YWAM structure very
Yeah.
well, but I mean, just to have an opportunity at such a young age, I think you have to grow up really quickly, right?
Right. Yeah. I didn't have an option basically. I mean, I think I grew up quickly anyway. I feel like
Sure.
most like first like what is that called? Oldest sibling. You kind of have to because like we were all kind of latchkey kids, So like I
Yeah.
got my sister off the bus. People always ask
Yes.
me, they're like, how did you learn how to cook so well? I was like, well, it was two options. I was like, we were either gonna be hungry or I was gonna cook something. So
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think yeah, I really, there was definitely like pain points of having to lead so young, but I think more than anything, it helped develop me in a way that I wouldn't have been able to if I was just, in Atlanta
Yeah,
at
sure,
18.
for sure. Okay, so I have to ask, like, Were your parents extremely supportive during this time, or did they have any opinions
Um,
about it?
Yeah, I think my mom, just to kind of give a little bit of background, my mom came here when she was 14. She went to high school here and college here. We don't have, any kind of language barrier, and she's definitely more Americanized in her thinking. Like when my friends meet her, they're like, "Oh, she's like more 1.5. She's not like full first gen." My dad is definitely, I mean, my dad was young too. He was 18 when he came. But he definitely has strong first gen Korean man energy in some senses, and in other senses, he really is not the like stoic Korean male figure that I guess most people grow up with. So my mom was the one that kind of pushed me. She's such an amazing, like I always say, if I could just be like a quarter of the woman she is, I've succeeded in life, because
Mm,
she's just really amazing. But she was like, you should go. Like, I don't think she expected me to be gone for 5 years.
right, right.
But
So how did it
yeah,
even extend that long?
yeah, it just kind of it happened, and yeah, I don't really know how to describe it. And the last year and a half, I was actually stateside at our base in Kansas City, and then
Okay.
took a team to the Philippines, and that was kind of my last leg of like my YWAM slash missionary, I guess, like chapter. So that's how it kind of ended. But yeah, it just, I don't know, it just happens. I didn't realize 5 years goes by so quickly. Um, but most of it was in the islands, which I really, really enjoyed. Like I was ready to live there forever. I thought I was
Yeah.
gonna, I always joke about this, but I thought I was gonna marry an islander, have like a last name that was 12 syllables long, and, you know, live on
Okay,
an island somewhere.
well, if you since you thought that, that
Yeah.
last trip to the Philippines, like, did something happen that you were kind of like, all right, it's time to go back home, or
I think getting hospitalized definitely was traumatic.
why were you
uh,
hospitalized?
yeah, so the closest answer I've gotten, like after I came back and did some tests, like they said I had an amoeba, which makes sense because I was not being probably as careful as you should. When
What's
you're
an
young, you think
amoeba?
you're
What
like
is
giving
that?
bins of, it's like a, it's gross. It's like a living organism in your bloodstream.
Oh
It's like
no.
kind of, it's like a type of parasite, stronger.
Oh God.
And so I got really, really sick, and like the city we were staying in doesn't have like the best hospital infrastructure. So my extended family in Korea actually ended up flying me to Korea because I just like I wasn't getting any better, and I was not just physically at like a breaking point. I think mentally, emotionally, I was really burnt out, and so they kind of flew me out to Korea, and I came back to the Philippines, and I finished that term with my team, and then came back to Kansas City. And I was already kind of feeling like, okay, maybe it's time for me to go home. But it's scary to go home because I don't have anything, I don't really have roots at home.
Right.
I've been gone
Right.
for so long. I didn't go to college. So, like, what am I going to do for work? So
Mm,
those thoughts were definitely like prevalent in my mind. But just through like a series of different events, I ended up staying back in Atlanta
mm.
after 5 years.
I mean, yeah, in some ways it's not the same. I'm not comparing my life to yours because it's not the same.
No,
But, like even me, I went to school at UC Irvine for 2.5 years, and then I came back and I finished my schooling at University of Georgia. However, I thought coming back, everything would just be the same, as I left.
right,
But then, 2.5 years was a long time for me to be away. I had changed, everyone else had
right.
changed, and it was
It's
quite.
such an outer body experience.
Yes, and it was like a really big transition. I don't know what I was expecting, but I knew I wasn't expecting what I came home to. It
I
was very
know.
lonely, you know.
Super, super lonely.
Yeah, so what was it like for you? Was it similar?
I mean, it was awful. I was also going through a breakup, so that was
Ugh,
like not helpful to the
oh my
situation.
gosh.
So yeah, I think I grieved a lot. Like my first year at home, I really grieved. Like, obviously my breakup, but obviously, my whole community was built kind of within this YWAM thing. And that's not a bad or good thing. I'm just stating like
Mm,
that's what it was. And to
mm,
not have that here in Atlanta, I will say I again like I had some friends that I had stayed connected with, and EJ and Les, I think you've
sure.
had EJ on. But I actually moved in with them because they're amazing, and they're
Mm,
like my older brother and sister slash mom and dad, depending on
yes,
what's
they
going
are
on with me
amazing.
emotionally.
Yes.
And that was really helpful and really kind of helped me through that period. But it was hard. It's coming back home, even small things. I think like culturally, I had adopted so many like mentalities that like are so foreign to like everyday life here. Ultimately, I think it's good that I came back because I was able to see outside of my very small network and my small framework of what I thought
Mm,
life was. But it was hard. It was really hard.
yeah.
I didn't get out of bed most days, I think, the first 6 months.
Oh man. So you said that moving in with EJ and Les, like that was helpful. But like
Yeah.
what kind of kickstarted? I know that you were really like um go moving forward in the fashion industry from what I
Yeah.
remember and what I recall.
So,
But yeah.
I kind of grew up in that industry. My extended family, they're in like the wholesale side. So we all grew up working in our family business, and mine just happened to be fashion related. And so I worked there for a little bit, and it just like I was like, this isn't like it's not working well. And so my only option was to like go get a retail job because I didn't have a college degree, like, and that's your foot into so many places. I had never, ever in my life created a resume. Like I was 21, never had a resume because of
Mm,
just like how, I had spent my years prior to that. And so I remember like sitting at Barnes and Noble, nervous out of my mind, like Googling how to write a resume.
wow.
And I ended up, I knew I wanted to get into styling because I've just always been like that person in my friend group, even like with my limited wardrobe. When we would like be on the mission field, I would be like the girl like showing my team members how to like tie their sarong in like 5 different ways. And so at Fabric, there was like they call their retail, like people that work the store, retail workers, personal stylists instead of just retail workers. And so that was like super appealing to me, and so I applied. And um, one of my best friends now, she was actually just the matron of honor in my wedding, but she was a manager at the Forum location at the time. And so
Mm,
when we met, she like instantly interviewed me, and like I had the job. And that's how I started at Fabric, kind of on the retail side. And I can really say that I worked from the bottom up. So I started as like a $9 an hour stylist, working like closing shifts. And I will say Fabric's unique in the sense that you do develop a clientele, even though you're in retail. Like it
mm.
is about personal styling. So I had clients that came to see me personally, and because you're in sales, like corporate can see like how you're doing in sales. And so I think that's how I started getting recognized, was just because like my sales and reoccurring customers and stuff like that. And then I became the manager as Liz kind of moved up to corporate. I became the manager of the Forum location, and performed pretty well. And so there was an opportunity for me to join the corporate team. They kind of created a new role, and it was called customer experience manager, because basically they were like, I always struggle with this, but I think it's something we need to break. As an Asian woman, it's really weird to like talk about yourself and your
Yeah,
accomplishments,
I
but we
get
need
it.
to break that. So
No,
we're just
yes.
gonna
I please, I
go
want to
for
know
it.
everything and all the accomplishments because that's why you're here. That's why you're here. I feel like no,
So
yeah.
yeah. So they basically were like, we just want Jesses at all 45 of our locations. So this is your job to kind of create and replicate whatever you're doing with your clients across all 42 of our franchises.
Amazing.
So,
Amazing.
I mean, that was insane.
Okay, wait,
And
so pause. Okay, I need to know, like, because, wait, okay, I have one question before we continue on with this story about the
yeah,
customer experience. So at any point were you like, I should go to college or no?
um, I mean, I did one semester when I first moved back at Perimeter just to like do it.
Okay.
Um, and like I did fine. Like I could have
Yeah.
kept going, and I got good grades, but it's just like, this is not, especially once I decided that I wanted to pursue fashion, I think that's when I was like, okay, I don't need to waste this time and money
Mm,
for me if I'm going to be in this industry. And not to say if you're in fashion, you don't need to go to college, just my circumstance personally and kind of assessing, like, I was like, I'm not like an 18-year-old. I need to like create my path. And so if I have limited time of energy, I want to pour it into being like very career driven, was how I thought about it at the time.
okay. Okay. No, I mean, and then all that to say though, I mean, we're going to talk about how it is that you helped Fabric in creating the
Yeah.
customer experience. But I mean, I would say that you're a pretty motivated person. Like, it's not like you're not an average soul, I believe. Like, to be able to.
My friend, yeah, my friends and my husband, they're like, she's a high capacity
Okay,
person.
okay. Because, like, I mean, this is not normal, I feel, but I also do feel it is important to, like what you mentioned, right? Like, let's break this barrier of Asian
Right.
Americans, like, talking about themselves because um like it is doable. Like even though you're high capacity, I feel like it's important to share this part of your story because people need to know that it's possible. Like it's
For
possible. You
sure.
just got to put the work in.
I mean, when people ask me, they're like, "Oh, you didn't go to college. Like, you seem like you're doing really well for yourself. Like, I mean, what do
I
you think I
hate
should do?"
that. I hate
Yeah, and
that.
I'm like, "Well, I was like, it's really not one size fits all, so I can't like guarantee you anything, but I will guarantee you if you choose not to go to college, you will have to work 2 times harder than the person that went to college to prove
Sure.
yourself.
Yeah.
That is fact."
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so customer experience, they asked you to like
Yeah.
lead the charge here.
Yep. Yep. And I just kind of like revamped existing programs. I went when we were opening new stores, new locations. I was kind of there all week on site, like, you know, walking the manager and the new owner through all processes. And it, like, how could we do marketing to cater to our customers? And that it's not just me. Like, I had a team and interns and really great partners, and a lot of the women that own fabrics, they like, this is their lifelong dream, so they're like just as passionate about creating those
Mm,
experiences. But I think the biggest kind of my goal when I was in that role was like, when you're in sales, it's really easy to get wrapped up in hitting numbers, because that's reality, that's business, and that's fact. You can't pay your employees, you can't turn the lights on if you're not making money. um but I think when that is like your starting point, that's when sales feels like super pushy. Like, we've all experienced it. You like walk into your store and people are breathing down your neck,
yeah.
and you're like, this is not pleasurable for me at all. Please go away.
Right.
And maybe because I'm that kind of shopper where I'm like, I put my headphones in, I keep my sunglasses on, I'm like, nobody talk to me, I'm in my zone. I was more like, okay, like, start an actual real conversation. Like, stop asking people how they're doing. Like, why don't you compliment something that they're wearing? Or if
Mm,
they say that, they're shopping for something, don't be like, okay, and then walk away. Like, ask them questions about the daughter that's graduating. Where is she going to college? And people want to be helped,
yes.
if they feel like it's coming from a good place. And so my whole goal in the beginning was to really bring us back, to kind of the heart of why fabric was kind of started, which was to always have style with that like heart piece of making women feel beautiful. And so that was in everything. I did a lot of things and tasks and programs, and we rolled out a lot of new systems, and I did a POS binder and all of these things. But I think if I had to kind of summarize in one thing, it would be, we were trying to bring back that heart piece of the styling aspect in our retail spaces.
Man, so like that relational piece for you was really key and I feel like in your success, honestly. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And even what made me successful as a manager, I think it was the ability to tailor. And so, getting to sell, I mean, share those like skill sets also with other managers
mm,
of, like, what motivates this person might not motivate this person. So you
sure.
have to figure out as the team lead, like, what am I going to do to try to get behind them, in a different way. while still kind of having that unified approach.
Yeah, and I mean, even listening to you talk about those types of strategies and people skills, it's like, I mean, is it far-fetched for me to say that I feel like you probably gained a lot of those skills on the mission field in those five
Oh
years,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, I think on the mission field, and then specifically from like my leaders and my, I mean, it's weird to call them my leaders because there's so much more to me than that. They're like my uncles and aunties is
Mm,
basically what I call them, and my aunties. Um, but watching them and getting to really observe and see the power of what happens when you truly like see people and meet people where they're at. I think
mm.
that's what taught me how to do that.
Yeah, yeah, man, that's so cool. So, but then you're like doing great at fabric. Why switch
Yeah.
careers? Why change?
Yeah, I think it's again like always a lot of things. I really lacked work-life balance. I think that's
Mm,
kind of a common theme in that industry. And I also felt like I was getting to a place where it was not as genuine as when I first started. Like
I see.
that's a big like core value for me, like
Mm,
realness, and like I don't like feeling like I'm a fraud in any way of what I'm trying to sell. And it's
mm,
not that, there was just some structural things that I like didn't, I would just wasn't like fully on board with. And I was like, man, I like feel a little guilty and not all the way right about like selling this like dream of a thing. And that's not bashing anyone in particular. It is just like, it's so easy to happen. And it really made me feel like, okay, I don't think this is what I need to be doing forever. I
mm.
wasn't necessarily looking to get out of fashion, but from the connections I did have in the fashion industry, it sounded like more of the same no matter what company I went to.
Interesting, interesting. So how is it that you got introduced to this kind of technology company?
Yeah, so it's crazy, but it was actually one of my old clients from when I managed at the forum. She is like this kick-ass boss lady, and I remember like when she would come into my styling sessions, like, she would always have like her headphones and she'd be like taking calls in the dressing room, and but like just killing it, like saying terms I had never heard in my life. And I was like, what do you do? And she was like, oh, I sell traffic technology. And I was like, what? No, thank you. And so she and my other, like her friend who also became my client and actually ended up working at Fabric with me and then left to kind of join that space. We were having lunch and she was like, so, I heard you're looking to maybe, pursue something else. Like, how do you feel about interviewing for this traffic company? And I was like, well, no. Like, I was really intimidated. Like, again,
Mm,
like I know we've talked about this a lot and kind of harped on it, but not having a degree, like that's a really big insecurity when I'm
sure.
entering like new professional spaces, because I'm so scared that like people are going to make assumptions about who I am, my intelligence level, or anything just based on that one life decision. And so
Mm,
I was like, oh, I don't know. And then the other kind of like blow was like, she was like, you'll have to come on as an assistant. She was like, that's what's available right now. You'll probably have to take a pay cut. But if you're serious, like this is the type of company where if they see your gifts and talents and see your work ethic, like you will grow very quickly and you will grow out of that position, I think, in 3 months. But that was so
mm,
scary, like to be
yeah.
like, wait, so you're telling me I'm going to an industry I've never heard of? I'm not going to know anything. And you want me to take a pay cut and be somebody's assistant? I was like, this is not sound like a good choice. Um, but through a lot of conversations and again, relationships and ultimately trust in those two relationships I had with two of my friends who are now my coworkers, like I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I don't know. There was something in my gut, and I did it, and they were right. Like I was in that role probably 2.5 months, and then they promoted me to like a internal sales role, And then I got promoted to regional sales manager of like Central. And then now, just recently, now I manage our two biggest distribution partners.
That is
So
amazing.
it's been crazy,
Yeah,
but
man. I mean, and you say it very humbly and lightly, but I know that a lot of work and time and effort and energy goes into what I'm sure is a very challenging job. And so,
yeah.
congratulations, Jess. Like, I just think
Oh,
it's
thank you.
amazing. Um,
I even as I'm like talking, I'm like, this is so awkward
I
talking
know,
about
I
achieve. I was
know.
like, this is so okay.
But then I know it's a little bit awkward, but at the same time, the people that I have on here, I truly want to celebrate because I feel like you
Yeah,
guys are not celebrated. As Asian Americans, we're not
no,
celebrating. Like
I
it's almost like
appreciate
sometimes it's
that.
the standard, but it's why? Why is
Yeah,
it the standard? You know what I mean?
I know. It's like
Um,
you have to thrive.
yeah, yeah, but I mean, and I think young people listening also should know that if you love something, and you put the work in, you can go extremely far. Whether I'm
Right.
not saying don't go to college. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying
Yeah,
there are
no,
other options. Like there are other
right.
roads to take. And um, I'm curious, like, when you interviewed for this new job, like,
Yeah.
what was the interview like?
Oh, it was very interesting. I will say my company is, we're a corporation, but we're not the conventional corporation either. And so I think that was something that was super appealing about the company culture. And it really was, they were like, so what do you know about traffic? And I mean, I was like, nothing. I was like, I really know nothing. And they would throw terms at me. They're like, do you know what preemption is? I'm like, I don't. I'm so sorry. Like, I was like, I can regurgitate to you what's on your website because I've looked at that and studied that. But if you really want me to say that I have an adequate understanding of what it is that y'all sell, the answer is I don't know. So that was really honest. But what I was confident on, and I think what I was able to communicate over is I'm a fast learner.
Mm.
I'm resourceful. I was like, and I'm passionate about bringing clarity into situations so that it increases efficiency for people. I was like, that is the one thing I
Mm.
can really clearly state that I am good at and want to bring to like the organization. And I think also the fact that I had background in wholesale and retail and, being that communication between a lot of different organizations and tiers I think that was, something that was also appealing to them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, I started out doing truly admin work. Like it was
Mm.
so humbling. Like I went back to booking flights, setting up meetings on calendar.
Man, that must have been
um
really difficult.
Yeah, it was truly, I mean, I cried a lot.
Oh.
There were so many, I was like, I've messed up. I was like, I've made the worst decision in my life. I've screwed up my future.
Mm.
It was really hard in the beginning. Like it was not glamorous.
Mm.
But again, I think it was the relational aspect. Like I call her name's Emily, and we work so closely together now. But there were so many days after work where I would be like, Emily, this is the worst thing I've ever done. Like this is not. And she was like, I know, just hold on for
Mm.
2 more months. She was like, just hold on, you'll see. Like, and I was like, nope. And slowly but surely, it really did turn the corner, and it went fast.
Yeah,
Once it
yeah.
did, yeah,
Oh man. But I guess, I feel like thank God for your friend who continued to encourage you though. And also, but
yeah.
like, so I mean, during that first 2 months though, and you said it was really difficult and challenging. Were you just like hanging on to like what your friend was saying? You just kind of trusted her
Yeah,
or
yeah, I think her word, and I tried to pray, but if I'm being completely honest, like even when I would pray, I was just so like confused and scared that like I don't even know if I was really, hearing
yeah.
God clearly. I'm
Yeah.
sure he was still reassuring me, but like if I'm being brutally honest, like that was not a part of my life where I'm like, oh, God told me everything's gonna be fine.
No,
Like
yeah, no, I hear you.
it's it's
Especially
it's
in like
it's
so much
not
uncertainty, right?
right, right. And I would the biggest advice I would tell people is please get a mentor. Get a mentor that you can
Mm.
trust and really like lean on. And I had Emily, who's like my coworker, but the her name's Lisa. She's super incredible. When I joined the corporate team at Fabric, she was the CMO and then CEO for a little bit, and then she ended up leaving for another opportunity. But she is like my mentor slash older sister, like the one that sat with me and helped me do my resume when I was interviewing for traffic, like
Mm.
coached me. Like I talked to her, I would say like twice a week on the phone, sometimes just crying. And she was really there to reassure me and cast vision for me when I couldn't have the vision for myself.
Yeah.
So that would be like a major thing that I would really encourage, whether you go to college, whatever, it doesn't matter, like whatever your life is. I think having trustworthy mentors in your life is really valuable.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good advice. I mean, um, but like it's kind of hard to find mentors sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, do you
I
just
think
ask like, "Oh, hey, can you help me?" Or what do you
Well,
suggest?
yeah, and I think that's where like I had access to so many I think different kinds of women because of like the industry I was in and
Mm,
the caliber of women that were on the corporate team. I think I had really, you know, I was really lucky in that way. I got to interact with some incredible women, and so that's where, obviously I connected with Lisa. But yeah, it really boils down to asking.
mm.
Like I walked into her office one day and I was like, I need help. I was like, I know I want out, and I need you to help me with my resume because I don't know what to do.
Wow,
Um,
wow.
and it's not like I even officially asked her, like, Lisa, will you be my mentor? Like, we never had that conversation. And she would probably be like, I'm not your mentor, I'm just your friend. But in my eyes, she's, and so yeah, I don't know if that word is intimidating, but just good counsel. Like,
Yeah.
and that could be your mom, that could be an older sister. No, like, my mom's my mentor in a different way. Or it could just be your girlfriends, right? Just safe space. I think maybe that's a better way to put it. Just having safe space and good, like, sounding walls for when you can't have that vision for your own life is
Yeah.
is crucial.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, Jess, we talked about a lot of the stuff that you really love about your job and what you're passionate about, but I'm curious, is there anything that you dislike about
Yeah,
managing?
tons.
Well, just pick one, like the most.
Yeah, no, I more than dislike, I think something that I want maybe I could highlight as that I really struggled with was I work in a really male dominated industry,
Okay.
and it's um older white males is
Mm,
typically who kind of, have been in this industry, and I was so intimidated, and they also were like, who are you? Like even when I became the sales manager, they were like, okay, and I would tell you anything why. And even if they didn't directly say that
interesting.
with their words,
Yeah.
it came off that way in their actions or non-actions
Mm-hmm.
or um, them going above me or through me. And so that was really hard, and
Mm,
I don't struggle with it as much because I've developed again such amazing relationships with these guys that I would never speak to otherwise.
right, right.
And I've gotten to know who they are, beyond just being my sales rep, right? Um, but I think that's like the most innate kind of internal struggle is like, oh, I have to prove myself. I have to prove myself.
Mm,
Okay, great, you got that PO, but that's not good enough. On to the next. Like you, and I'm always fighting that battle within of like, I want to succeed and I want to work hard because that's just who I am. And in a sense that like brings me joy,
mm.
like working hard and running in 5 different directions, that weirdly is satisfying to me.
Yeah, yeah.
But also it's difficult to not always carry that chip on my shoulder of like, no, you're gonna know that I'm valuable and you're gonna know that I'm useful,
Wow.
and that I bring something to the table. I think another thing that is hard is when people begin to depend on you because you have done that role of being the bridge. I'm like, somebody please just pick up the phone. I'm like, pick up the phone yourself and you
Right.
can do this.
Yes, yes.
But so I'm kind of like learning that, and as my team grows, like now I like gained a sales assistant, but she's in South Africa, and so that's like a she's great, but like, you know, learning how to like give up ownership and like things that I'm used to kind of micromanaging and entrusting that to somebody else to take care of, even if it means it won't be done exactly the way that I wanted. I think that's like just things that I'm kind of currently working through. I don't know if that answers your questions of things I don't enjoy, but that's like things that I'm like kind of actively working through right now in my career.
No, it definitely answers my question. And I find it really interesting that first one that you mentioned about just um, your role as an Asian American woman in this industry. And you're not the first person that's been on to kind of share that challenge,
Yeah,
being in this tech world and having to work with not just males, but like, you know, like an older generation of males too
right.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I think if you, and I don't know if this is the same for you, but then you add this whole like we live in the South aspect
Oh yeah, yeah,
too,
for sure.
and it just kind
I
of
mean,
adds on.
I manage Texas and the Southeast.
Right. So I mean I
So
would imagine, right? But so like I guess you did give me some solutions to how you kind of are starting to overcome that because you've built relationships
yeah,
with people. But in the forefront of it, in like in the beginning, like if there were other women listening to this right now, would you give them any advice on how to kind of, other than just pressing through, like, is there any practical
yeah.
advice?
Ugh, I don't know if there's practical advice, but I think two things that were helpful were again like having safe space to kind of like
Yeah,
talk things through with like when I had passive aggressive, you know, comments thrown at me in the
sure.
Zoom, like asking my other, you know, asking Emily to stay on. I'm like, okay, did you catch that? Am I crazy? Am I the only one that heard that? Or am I great? You know, and just feeling a little bit validated. I know that
Mm,
sounds like you don't need anyone's validation, but no, like
no.
sometimes when you're feeling really vulnerable and really like you start questioning yourself, you just need someone to tell you're not crazy.
Right.
So that's helpful. And then I think as you for me, I feel like as I grew more confident about product knowledge and knowing what I bring to the table, that need to like really prove myself, it starts to kind of like go away a little bit. And developing like really, really, really close working relationships like with people on my team. So like I work with, we call them sales engineers, and like that is my person. And so I know if I'm on a Zoom call and I don't know the technical answer to something, like Freddie's got my back and he's going to step in for me. And so that fear of like, oh
Nice.
my God, I'm not going to have the right answer, like that kind of also goes away because I know that I don't have to do it all on my own. I can rely on the technical person on my team to provide that insight that I may not be able to give.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That's good. Oh, man. So many
It's
layers.
hard though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely there's not one thing that gets rid of all of that stuff
Yeah.
because
Yeah. For
yeah,
sure.
like there is lots of layers. I will say though, like as much as it's difficult, I managed Southeast and Texas and all these guys and blah 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 blah. But I think also like it's given me confidence in a different way because now when I walk into a room full of white people, I don't shrink. I don't feel like, oh my God, like
Right.
what are they, you know, like before. I think and fabric was kind of helpful. I think the first step of like
Sure.
confidence and being in non-Asian like settings. And YWAM was pretty like there's like lots of different ethnicities and stuff too, but you know it's different when you're in a professional setting. You're like
Yes.
in a blazer
Yes.
walking into a room, you're like, oh my
Yes.
God. But that I think that has been a benefit is like being around them and like just getting to know them like on a personal level as well. Like that's been helpful. And sometimes like not for the people that I have relationships with now, like if they say something that makes me uncomfortable, like there's times where I feel like I have enough of a relationship to tell them and be like, hey, you know, just FYI, didn't love that.
Yeah. That's
Um,
awesome though. That's awesome. I do
yeah.
feel like, you have this personality that allows this kind of transparency with other people. But that's really cool. Well, Jess, I really appreciate all your vulnerability today and sharing your story. Before we end our time together, I always ask people like you gave a lot of advice, I feel like, but is there anything that I missed out on, or was there any last piece of advice that you'd want to give somebody that's maybe even thinking about like, oh, this might be an interesting field to go into?
Yeah.
And oh, actually, I guess I should ask you, um, I know you didn't get a college degree, but maybe somebody thinking about this field, do you know if there's like something to study?
I mean, there's so many different avenues. It kind of depends like what side of it you want to be on. So like I said, like we have I guess I can describe kind of like really briefly like the different teams. So
That
we
would be
have like
great. Yeah.
application engineers. So those are the people that like develop like the code that makes our stuff work,
Mm,
like not I. And so like software engineering or application engineering, like IT stuff, like so studying VPNs and like really
mm,
that the infrastructure part of it that's virtual, like you can really, focus in on that and build that out. Because I think as technology grows, the need for that is only going to increase.
mm.
So I think engineering or IT development, if you want to be, I feel like the thing with sales is if you get good at sales and building relationships, and whether you get a degree in business and marketing or whatever it is, like that's something that is so universal, and you really can, like, you're not limited to an industry.
Mm.
Which is kind of like what I did, right? Like I kind of
Yeah, yeah.
totally switched industries. But I think, when you get good at business management and stuff like that, like that's something you kind of study. And I feel like that's what people do, like when they're unsure, they just get like a business degree.
Yeah. This is true. This
um,
is true.
yeah, so that's always a great one, I feel like. And then yeah, I mean, really, we utilize in our industry every skill set. So like one of my team members, so the government puts out like proposals, and like each company that wants to like basically win that money, win
Hmm.
that grant, has to write a proposal. And so she's like the strongest writer ever, and she puts together like these 40-page proposals that kind of plead our case of why our solution is the best. So even like, an English major or
Oh,
right, like that
wow.
is so crucial and can be used. And so I don't know, I think that would be kind of maybe my advice is like, when it comes to technology, don't feel like you have to be like the typical stereotype of what it means to work in tech. Like I would have never said, like Abe says, I can't even make like technology in our house work. Like, so he's
Abe is her
like
husband.
baffled. Yeah, yeah. He's baffled that I work for a technology company every day. He's like, you can't even make Chromecast work. I don't understand. I'm like,
So
so
funny.
yeah, I think that would be it. Like technology is growing and there's so many aspects to it. So like really be open and just build relationships, because that's like the connections you make in
Mm,
life. That really is like what opens doors to so many things, not just professionally, I think in other places, but if we're
of
talking
course.
careers, I think building relationships and connections, you never know what those are going to take you to in the next chapter.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Man, Jess, thank you so much again for your time today and just sharing with me about your life and your job. I learned so much. I gained so much. I'm wondering if somebody is interested in learning more, would you be okay with me connecting you with them?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So, guys, you heard it here. If you want to learn more about what Jess does or this industry or even just maybe her life, I'm sure she has a lot to share. Feel free to reach out to me through social media. You can DM me or you can email me at podcastwigu@gmail.com. All right, guys, until next time. Thanks, Jess. Bye.